Now, while a brand like NXT will always be given the benefit of the doubt when it comes to booking decisions, because let's be honest, their track record is stellar, the main roster, on the other hand, not so much, and doesn't really get those goodwills from the fans, and to be fair, rightly so, because how many times have they let you down on certain booking decisions or particular wrestlers that you wanted to see do well? It's just not great, really, is it? However, the optimistic and positive wrestling fans, and believe it or not, there are some still out there, you've just got to look really hard to find them. They still believe that WWE just might turn good one of these days, because when they've got a roster that's so talented, a roster that's so deep and so full of potential, you're always only one really good episode of Monday Night Raw away from something fantastic happening. So in the spirit of dreaming the big dream as we did for WrestleMania 35 and clinging on to those few things that might just happen in WWE but most likely probably won't, my name is Adam Nicholas and these are the 10 long-term WWE payoffs you should be excited for. Number 10, Kofi Mania 2. All of the good vibrations that came from Kofi Kingston's incredible WrestleMania 35 victory, where he finally got his hands on the WWE Championship after an 11-year journey, well, it was all shattered in a matter of seconds, 8 seconds to be precise, by one Mr. Brock Lesnar on the debut episode of WWE on Fox back on October 4th of last year. In a little bit of cute character work that was either some very stellar stuff all off his own back, or maybe, just maybe, an interesting direction the company decided. He had his very own little moment where it was, everything is fine, it's totally fine, and he was grinding the pancakes into tiny little bits. With all that pent up anger and frustration towards Brock Lesnar and the title, where's he meant to channel it all? Because Brock and the belt have buggered off to Monday Night Raw, and it's kind of left Kofi in a bit of a pickle. Well, that is one way he could possibly do that. With the 2020 Royal Rumble just on the horizon, could this possibly be the year that Kofi's acrobatics and creativity finally see him win the Rumble, finally mean something more than just a funny and creative spot, but more importantly, find him a route back to Brock Lesnar, back to the WWE Championship, and hopefully a rematch? We know it's a long shot, but we'd be on board. Number 9, end of an era. The geeks who are pretending to be jocks who don't actually realize that they're geeks, Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish were the perfect two for Adam Cole to kind of take alongside him and help dominate the black and gold brand from the moment they arrived. Add Roderick Strong into the mix and the crew had their 4th member, although not by their choice, but by his, and that is the crucial difference when it comes to this unit. Above all else, Adam Cole has clearly been out for himself since day one, despite the claims of solidarity between the group. Just look at the entrances. Anytime they come down to the ring, Adam Cole is there in his own t-shirt rather than that of the groups. And whenever things go wrong for the Undisputed Era, Cole immediately puts the blame on Strong. We see the power dynamic clash there, and he always tries to keep him down in front of Fish and O'Reilly. But the one thing Cole has failed to identify, despite him thinking he's the cleverest man on earth, is that one day Roddy Strong is going to get sick of this and backbreaker the Undisputed Era's leader into oblivion. Subtle hints like this are being constantly dropped to kind of foreshadow the potential split, and while it will be a very dark day in NXT when Undisputed Era finally decides to call it a day, the feud between these two will be absolutely sensational. Number 8, Kevin Owens just shows up. Now, for anybody who follows MythGifts on Twitter, and if you don't already, it's a fantastic account you should follow if you're into wrestling. Check it out down here if you want things related to Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and all sorts of New Japan pro wrestling stuff. But she has catalogued in a wonderful series of GIFs just how long and how far back this Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins feud actually goes. Even before Owens was in WWE, Seth Rollins had told him when he found out he was going to be coming for a WWE tryout that he needed to get into better shape because he didn't believe they would opt for a guy of Owens' stature and physique. Well, he was obviously wrong on that count, but even worse for Seth is that in this little narrative where Kevin seems to get everything Kevin wants, his main roster debut was against none other than John Cena, and when he finally did tell Seth what was going to be happening, Seth, it's fair to say, lost his mind. The irony, of course, here is that Seth Rollins, inside his narrative, is literally that exact guy. Seth was handpicked by Triple H to be the guy who left the Shield and become WWE Champion eventually, whereas Kevin Owens was literally handed the Universal title at Seth's expense by Triple H. Wouldn't it be wonderful if WWE decided to play on some of this from their history, from the previous history they have on the Independents, in Ring of Honor, etc. But whether or not they actually tap into that, we'll have to wait and see. If they do, though, whew, what a feud this could be. Number 7, do it themselves. Now, we all remember the fantastic feud between Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. 3 years in the making, no less, but it was cruelly and harshly cut short in February 2019 when Tommaso Ciampa got a very unfortunate neck injury. Despite the fact we didn't get the final match between Gargano and Ciampa, we did get Gargano versus Cole for the vacant NXT Championship, which Gargano would go on to win. And while it may have been nicer to see him take it off Ciampa and end the feud on a big, massive high and a victory over his real-life best friend but on-screen bitter rival, this was still pretty good. Since then, Adam Cole has won the NXT Championship and refuses to remove his grasp on it after dethroning Gargano. Ciampa has returned from injury, whereby he has set his sights to redeem Goldie. Should Ciampa manage to regain the NXT Championship against Adam Cole, you'd have to think that perhaps Johnny Gargano could come out and say, "Hey buddy, what do you think? One last time?" And I'll be honest, anybody who doesn't want to see that match is not correct of mind. Number 6, the past informs the future. When Finn Balor returned to the black and gold brand after leaving the main roster and all of its mishandlings of his character, he returned and was talking about how his past was going to inform his future. It was all a bit, well, I'll be honest, it wasn't for me. It was all a bit, it felt a bit muddled, but he finally found his stride when he turned heel and attacked Johnny Gargano. From this point on, Balor's return suddenly felt electric. Yes, there was that huge pop when he first returned on that episode where it was the very first night of the Wednesday Night Wars. How could we forget? But now Balor had the hunger in his eyes. He'd found the thing that was missing. He'd attacked Johnny Gargano, and all of a sudden, his promos became absolutely electric, must-watch television. In 2020, Finn Balor's goals are absolutely clear as day. He wants to return to the black and gold brand. Check, that's done. Now he wants the NXT Championship. That's not happened yet, but he's got to get through Johnny Gargano before he finds his way to either Tommaso Ciampa or Adam Cole. The point here is that Balor isn't coming back for some sort of nostalgic run. No disrespect to Tyler Breeze, but essentially he's back to help the talent that's coming up. Finn Balor has returned because he wants to put the talent who are there in their place and remind them of just how good Finn Balor can be. Number 5, TakeOver WrestleMania. 2 stars who were once pillars of NXT and are now on the main roster, albeit sort of at the top, but still you could argue not quite the way they were once presented in NXT, are Bayley and Sasha Banks. Now, while you could potentially argue that they're enjoying one of their best spells on the main roster, not that that bar's been super high for either of them, their heel personas kind of mesh well together, and Bayley is the champ, it kind of works. And while that's all good and well, you still have to look at the pair and think, there's so much more they could be achieving with them. I mean, just look at the potential they have as the top stars of any company, literally, whether that's AEW or WWE. Just go back to TakeOver Brooklyn, that absolute classic between the two, and you will not be disappointed. Those are 2 performers who can deliver at the highest level. With Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, and Ronda Rousey main eventing WrestleMania 35, the sky is now indeed the limit. And with Becky and Sasha's track record of being able to deliver such high quality matches in such high positions on the card, who would be against this match? It might not happen in this year because, let's be honest, to have back-to-back years of women main eventing, well, it's a push for WWE. I would like it, but you can't imagine Vince McMahon would be sold on that. But what's to say at some point in the near future, that's very much a match we could have at the top, the very top of a WrestleMania card. To see the other 2 of the highly acclaimed Four Horsewomen get a chance to main event at WrestleMania would be fantastic. But if we can't do that, number 4, horsing around. Now, for as long as these 2 teams have been anywhere near each other, there's been talk of this match, the Four Horsewomen of MMA versus the Four Horsewomen of NXT. Now, obviously, Ronda Rousey is currently on her impregnation vacation, I believe that's what she calls it. We've got Shayna Baszler down in NXT, who was recently dethroned for the NXT Championship, and along with Marina Shafir and Jessamine Duke. So they're all kind of, they're not lost, they're just waiting for the next thing to do, I guess. Whereas you go to the main roster, you've got Bayley and Sasha, who are currently on SmackDown, with Bayley being the champ and Sasha being the excellent cheerleader, I guess you'd call her perhaps, if that's the thing. Becky Lynch is the man on Monday Night Raw, and Charlotte Flair is always there or thereabouts. We're just waiting for her next big thing. Now, ever since Ronda Rousey had debuted on the main roster, there was whispers, there was talk about this match happening at some point. We felt like we were getting close towards it, maybe around Survivor Series time, around WrestleMania time, if the main event hadn't been what it was. It was all there, the parts were moving, but it hasn't yet happened. But you have to believe, maybe not this year, but maybe next year, wherever Ronda Rousey is, when she finally decides to come back to WWE, Vince McMahon is going to be thinking, there's 4, There's 4, let's make the 8 of them, and let's make some money. Number 3, anyone but you. Now, if we just rewind for a little second, you'll remember that Bray Wyatt, before he was The Fiend, and Bray Wyatt, this lovely Mr. Rogers kind of character, he was Bray Wyatt of the Wyatt family, the leader with a big beard and the dreads. You remember him? Interesting character, wasn't he? And at a certain point of that Bray Wyatt's career, he was embroiled in a feud with Roman Reigns. And you'll remember Roman Reigns with the I'm a little teapot, short and stout kind of video with his daughter and Bray Wyatt getting the whole family involved. It was all a little bit weird, but if you remember rightly, there was one really important quote that came from all of that, and it was Bray Wyatt saying, anyone but you, Roman, which at the time was quite relevant because the fans were sick to death of Roman Reigns being put in everything. But with WrestleMania 36 on the horizon, The Fiend currently holding the Universal Championship, and Roman Reigns, without having had a big major title shot in almost a year, I believe, you'd have to think the time is starting to come right for the two to cross paths once again. WrestleMania 36 needs a big match, and The Fiend and the Big Dog, well, that would surely work out for Vince McMahon. Bray's reimagined Fiend gimmick has seen him go through all of the people from his past, Daniel Bryan, Seth Rollins, Braun Strowman, and give them all a little bit what for. Well, Roman Reigns was very much on that list, and we've yet to see any massive interactions between the two. So you have to think perhaps it's not that far away. As of this recording, The Fiend has been presented as untouchable. He demolished Seth Rollins, he demolished anyone really who's come into his path, but Roman Reigns is on the way back to the main event, and mark my words, that is coming sooner than you think, and rightly so, to be honest, because Roman Reigns is a bloody great guy. Is Roman Reigns the guy who could absolutely demolish The Fiend once and for all? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Number 2, Matt Riddle versus the world. Who in their right mind wouldn't like Matt Riddle? Well, probably Bill Goldberg, to be honest, but I digress. What I mean is, in the WWE universe, it's hard not to love the bro. Now, not only does Matt Riddle exude confidence, but he also brings with him an actual real-life MMA pedigree, one that sees him come up with some of the most fantastic moves possible. When Matt Riddle goes, and when he hits that part of the match where his engine kicks in, Jesus Christ, you need to be paying attention, because it's going to be move after spot, and you cannot take your eyes off him. And not only that, but he has such a flair for sports entertainment. I mean, think about him dropping those flip-flops into the crowd, off his feet. Who else could pull that off and look so cool? And you have to think that's a sports entertainment background that Vince McMahon has got his eyes on. And for all of those reasons, you'd have to think that Matt Riddle could be seen as the perfect modern-day wrestler in the eyes of WWE. He's unafraid of the rest of the world. He says some really daft things at times without thinking 5 steps ahead, potentially getting himself into trouble. But he's not afraid of anyone, least is he afraid of the likes of Brock Lesnar or Bill Goldberg. Will Matt Riddle be the one who puts Brock Lesnar out of the Royal Rumble, for example? And will we go down that route? Or are we just going to see a huge WrestleMania matchup between Matt Riddle and Bill Goldberg? Either one of those are fine with me, Vince. Just pick one and let's get it done already. And number 1, Bad E. Now, while this very list did begin by talking about Kofi Kingston's redemption and potential road back to the WWE Championship and Brock Lesnar, it feels fitting that we should end with another one of his stablemates of the New Day, and Mr. Big E. Now, as you can imagine, a lot of the focus and attention has been on the other members of the New Day. There's been Kofi Kingston as a WWE champion. You've had Xavier Woods, who's currently out with injury, but is always getting some extracurricular push with his up-down ventures. But what about Big E? Who really is focusing on Big E, other than the time when he was injured and was on Twitter, because that was fantastic. Now, yes, while they always say there's solidarity amongst the New Day, eventually, surely, Big E is going to want his career to progress. Now, we've heard teasers in the past that Big E could turn heel, but what if eventually we finally pulled the trigger on that this year? Imagine if Kofi Kingston is chasing the dragon with Brock Lesnar, wants to get that WWE Championship, hell, even in the Royal Rumble, and Big E decides that that's not going to happen. Can you imagine the heat if Big E was the one to derail his own brother's potential rise back to the top? It's something that Vince McMahon has expressed interest in before, and let's be honest, Big E in himself, well, the clue's in the name. He's big, he's massive, he's the kind of guy Vince McMahon could really get behind, and I'd love to see what an angry, vicious Big E could look like. I don't really want to see the end of the New Day, but I'd love to see Big E get a chance to prove to the world just what he could do. So there you have it. There's our list of long-term payoffs that you should potentially be excited for, but ultimately might not end up getting. Hey, that's life. That's what all the people say. Let us know your thoughts and any ideas you might have about long-term booking or other suggestions in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and share. Hit the old subscribe button if you haven't already. You can find the original article for this on whatculture.com/WWE. You can follow What Culture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. You can follow me on Twitter at It's Adam Nicholas, or maybe you just want some more videos, and if you do, there should be some just over here. I'm Adam Nicholas, and I'll see you next time.